Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our community awareness program, Firewise. If everyone could please stand, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I see that Banning PD isn't here quite yet. So we're going to start with Mike Romero from Securitas. Do you want to use that one or this one? Okay, perfect.
Mic check, perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Romero. I'm your Director of Security here at Sun Lakes. With me is Lieutenant Roman, who's next in command. I'm going to touch up on a couple little things that are happening around the community and changes that are going to be upcoming for Sun Lakes that you guys are going to be really happy to hear about. First and foremost, I've extended the coverage, patrol, and monitoring of our individuals outside of our perimeter. So our security team has expanded and increased patrol coverage beyond the perimeter walls of Sun Lakes to maintain awareness of any activity that may affect the community. While these areas are outside of our jurisdiction, we continue to monitor for any signs of encampments or individuals lingering near entry points and the northern wall near the train tracks of the north side as well. These areas include all of Highland Springs, Sun Lakes Boulevard, the RV lot, and South Highland Homes Road. If you notice any suspicious activity near the perimeter, we encourage you to report it immediately to security. While we do not engage with the individuals off-site, we do coordinate with local authorities when necessary to ensure our community remains secure. We're also coordinating and planning with Hernan in doing some aerial drone footage of monitoring the outer perimeters of Sun Lakes as well. So if you do see a drone flying outside of Sun Lakes, that is the security team working with Hernan so that we can get better understanding of what's going on outside of Sun Lakes encampments, and keeping track of those individuals so that we can report them accordingly. We want to inconvenience them and we want to prevent them from coming into Sun Lake. So if you happen to see anything suspicious outside, please call us. Any unsecured gates, you can call us. We'll go take a look at them to make sure that they're properly locking up. Theft prevention and increase in these increased incidents. There has been a small rise of theft-related incidents reported to security within the community, primarily involving package thefts like Amazon deliveries left in front of a home, or sometimes vehicle break-ins and unsecured garages. Many of these incidents are crimes of opportunity where suspects target vehicles with visible personal items, keys left in the ignition, or unlocked doors. Additionally, open garage doors create easy access for theft. We strongly urge residents to secure their property by keeping vehicles locked, removing valuables from sight, and ensuring garage doors are closed when not in use. If you're expecting a package, consider using delivery lockers or having items sent to a secure location to reduce the risk of theft. Another way to prevent or monitor these incidents is by having an easy-to-install Ring camera for the front door, which would be recording all activities taking place in front of any home. Neighbors can actually help you out with that as well. So if you guys have a Ring cam or a little security cam installed by your window, it helps your neighbors and the community to keep a better visual of what's happening within those households. So we always recommend that if possible. If security comes along, we might ask you, hey, can we look at your footage from your Ring cam? Can we look at the footage that your window recorded in case there happens to be an incident that takes place around that neighborhood? So any help is always greatly appreciated. How many folks have you guys seen that new gate arm that we have at the guest lane that's all lit up with LED lights? Really nice, right? Well, great news. The board has approved and we're working along with First Residential into getting all of our gate arms installed. In the coming weeks, all community entry gates will be upgraded with new metal gate arms equipped with LED lights for improved visibility. These enhancements will be installed by Automation Pride. They'll provide a stronger and more durable solution compared to the previous gate arms, which are all made out of wood. They're very flimsy, easy to break. Reducing damage from vehicle collisions and improving nighttime visibility. We ask residents and guests to be mindful of these new installations by approaching gates cautiously and ensuring that they fully open before proceeding. These upgrades are part of our ongoing commitment to enhancing security and accessibility within Sun Lakes. So they are made out of metal, folks, and they won't have that little foam on the bottom, so they're gonna be nice and clean looking. However, if they do get hit, they just pop off automatically, but they are made out of metal, which means your vehicle might sustain some minor damage. So just be cautious, take your time when proceeding through those gate arms, and we'll make sure that we're doing our job as well. So that's pretty much it for my report. Do you have any questions or concerns? Question over there.
My question is, I think it would be helpful if we had some kind of an idea what kind of crime is taking place in Sun Lakes.
So right now, we've seen a slight minor little increase in theft occurrences. That's one of our main go-tos that we
No,
bring
but I
in
meant
reports
like
on.
in the lifestyle or something, there would be a list of activities, criminal activities taking place within Sun Lakes.
Okay, that's something that I can work with the safety committee, and maybe we can get a little narrative done for you guys, as well as working with your district delegates. I do communicate with your district delegates thoroughly and keeping them up to date of what's happening in their sections or their districts. I always encourage those district delegates to call me directly, and I'm more than happy to provide them with updates on what's happening in those areas and what they can do to better that part of their neighborhood. But I'll definitely make a commentary on that for you.
You need the microphone. Hang on just 1 second. Here, you need the microphone and speak into it.
Okay. Oh, all right. You know, like where you have homeless.
Mhm.
And, you know, I went there today to check it out because in the past 2 months, I've called the Beaumont police, I called the Banning police, and you can't hear it? Jeez, I'm not used to this. Yeah. But anyways, you know, I walk and I run a lot on Highland Springs, and as you get past that back gate, maybe 100, 150 feet in, there's like tents in there.
Correct.
I took pictures today. And, you know, there's people, there's trash everywhere in there.
Yes.
You can't see it from the street.
You cannot. You'd have to
And-
walk down there to actually
Yeah.
see it.
But, you know, and not only that, it's a fire hazard with all the brush that's in there, that's been in there for probably years. It hasn't burnt. I don't know why we have to wait for a fire to get that cleaned. It should be cleaned. That's what happened over there in Palos Verdes.
I agree with you 1,000%. So unfortunately, in our jurisdiction, that's not Sun Lake's property. However, what I can do is we work along with Banning PD, and they do have dates where they come out and clear out certain sections. A perfect example was the northern side of where Mrs. Walters coordinated with the police department, and they came out, was it last month, Michelle? It was February. And they cleared a lot of debris and trash that was pretty much taking up that area.
Let me add to that.
Uh-huh.
Now. This is what was weird is like outside the gate there on the east side of the street, on the east side of the street. Surprisingly, that is Beaumont. And I have a map. I just printed that out too if you wanted to look at it. But for some reason on that side, that is not Banning. And
We've
that's
worked
why-
with both Banning and Beaumont. I do coordinate and working with both city departments, but I can also, in addition, if you've made a call, I can continue making calls as well.
Yeah.
To see if they can come out and coordinate with either city to see if they can come out and help us in removing some of that debris.
Because those fences aren't that high.
They're not.
And they can jump any fence at night. Part of, you know, being, you know, aware of, you know, somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
Maybe worse.
Visibility is limited out there. My cameras can only go so far in terms of what we're monitoring in that specific gate.
Yeah.
Hence, us increasing our patrol, going out there more and doing more extensive searches beyond gate number 6,
Yeah.
reporting suspicious activities like vehicles that are parked there for long periods of time that don't seem that they belong there, working and getting our drone footage up as well.
Yeah.
We want to inconvenience them and let them know that we are keeping an eye on them. And I think by making our patrol presence there more often is going to decrease them from coming into Sun Lakes more frequently.
Last question. Why do they even let people go back there? Why can't they just put a gate that says no trespassing?
That is actually private property. It belongs to somebody else. It doesn't belong to Sun Lakes. It's owned by a private individual. And I know there are some members here in Sun Lakes that have tried to make contact with that individual to see if they can work hand in hand to better secure that section or even clearing out that area.
Or putting no trespassing, in those areas where
Yeah.
they could start a
Sir,
fire.
if I could make a comment.
Uh-huh.
I work very closely with Banning PD and Opportunity Village, and you have to realize we're very short-staffed in the police department. Their job is not to pick up trash. We have certain times of the year that we coordinate with the Railroad Department and with Banning PD and with different people in the community here. And that's the only time that it can happen. We can't just go out there. There's hazardous materials out there, don't forget. There is feces, there's urine, there's needles, there's all kinds of things. So we are not allowed to go out there. Securitas is not allowed to go out there. So we have to wait until we get all these, the railroad and everybody, Caltrines, everybody together to do that for us because they wear suits. So you just have to be patient. You need to call, but we can't just go out there and just because you called, it's going to be cleaned up.
Correct.
But we're going to work, like I said, in our part and do what we legally can do in monitoring and inconvenience them. Just like Michelle said, I can't send my team out there because we don't know if one of those individuals might be armed or there might be drugs or something that's involved, and I don't want my guys getting, get pricked by a needle or anything like that. So we're going to take it safe, but we're going to definitely monitor as much as we can. And
Well,
we're doing
they have
some
a sheriff's
upgrades.
department on Hargrave. Why can't they use some of the prisoners in there, people that are in jail, to come and clean this place up?
That's not, yeah. Great suggestion, and if you want to make a call to
They
the
do
sheriff
it at
department.
Caltrans.
Yeah.
Caltrans does that all
Yeah.
the time.
Every county has ways of how they operate, sir, unfortunately.
Don't forget, they have to wear hazmat suits. We're not going to supply the prisoners with hazmat suits. And they're in custody for a certain reason. So, if you want to contact the sheriff department, contact the sheriff department.
All right. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right. Thank you for your time, folks. Have a good one.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so Banning PD is not here yet, and I'm sure he is stressed out because he's thinking he's got to be here for me, and he's probably doing homeless liaison stuff. So anyway, I'm going to introduce Joe Kenny, Captain Joe Kenny from the Cal Fire, and he's going to give us our presentation. Please make sure that you wait for your questions till the very end so that he can finish his presentation, and you need to have a mic because this is on Channel 97. Thank you. Do you want to use this mic?
Make sure all this works. Okay, so, pardon me, as Michelle said, my name's Joe Kennedy. I'm one of 8 captains in the state assigned to land use planning for CAL FIRE. Among our other duties is helping folks with Firewise. I have Vincent's hiding in the back. Vincent Vega and Jimmy Barraza are 2 of our other captains in the program that are joining me today for moral support. Make sure you can see the presentation. Oh, there's my presentation. So I'm just going to give a quick rundown on the NFPA Firewise USA program. I've spoken to a couple of your community, and we'll get to some of the things we talked about in here, and then we'll take questions at the end. Hopefully I'll answer them before they get there. So NFPA Firewise is a national recognition program through the National Fire Protection Association, and CAL FIRE runs the program here in the state of California. The U.S. Forest Service administers the program in the rest of the country. So a couple things we're going to talk about today is the program goals. So it's wildfire education, individual responsibility. Each person is responsible for their own property, and then it encourages neighbors helping neighbors. And if you think about it, if your home is rock solid protected against wildfire and your neighbors aren't, then it's kind of not useless, but it certainly degrades what you've done to your property. So that's where the community coming together to reach these common goals comes in handy and is beneficial. So again, we're going to talk about the overview and then how do you become a site? Because that's everybody's question. So it's a volunteer, community-oriented program. It's resident leader, and I've spoken to a couple that, whether they know it or not, have volunteered to be resident leaders. And correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, as you try to hide from me. 3,100-ish properties. So one of my slides coming up here, haven't gotten there yet. The program is a minimum of 8, a maximum of 2,500, which is way beyond the scale, in my opinion, of what's manageable. So we've already kind of discussed, you've already got some clear defined communities within Sun Lakes. So the boundaries are already exist, and there's different ways to break up your boundaries. So anyway, in the program, sorry, I'm gonna get by the mic. There's the state liaison. He's our deputy chief in Sacramento. Then there's the state area representative, one of our battalion chiefs, also in Sacramento. And then I am your state divisional representative, regional coordinators, which we don't really have, and it's not a mandatory thing in this part of Riverside. And then our resident leaders, and like I said, a couple of your residents, whether they know it or not, have sort of volunteered to do that for me. Which I will say, I jokingly say that, but one of the requirements is a resident leader. I am here to help through the process. Resident leader drives the program in each community. So the benefits, educate the residents on your wildfire risk. Anybody that's lived here long enough and has looked out the mountain behind you, if I'm pointing the right way, knows the wildfire risk. Every one of us have spent cold nights on that hill fighting fires, Silver Fire, Esperanza Fire. I was on the mountain fire over there, or watching a fire over there. We've all been there. Approve the awareness of the wildfire risk reduction best practices is what can you do to protect your home from those wildfires, and from here, the embers from those wildfires. That's the key, being down here in the valley. Let's see, so the benefits is working towards the reduced wildfire risk. You're working to protect your single greatest investment. I am reluctant to say that yes, there are insurance benefits. I don't know what they are. We do not get involved in the discussion of insurance. That's the insurance commissioner. He has information on his website. I do know that he mandates insurance companies give a discount to Firewise USA recognized communities. I don't know what that formula looks like. I don't know what that discount looks like. The pessimist in me says that a dollar discount is a discount, right? But I don't know what that is. That's a question for the insurance company or the insurance commissioner's office. Potential for grant funding, that is in cooperation with a nonprofit. Firewise communities themselves do not meet the requirements of the qualifications for grant funding unless they are a nonprofit. And typically Firewise communities are smaller, or obviously nothing's too small to be a nonprofit, but the size of Firewise communities typically don't lend themselves to becoming a nonprofit. So working through a nonprofit, a fire safe council, or some other type of nonprofit has the potential for grant funding. We already talked about the insurance premium. One of the things I do want to talk about is helping firefighting efforts. And there's a slide here, it's in a couple slides that I'll show you. When and like I said, we've all been on that hill, all three of us have been on that hill fighting fire. As a company officer, when I go into a community ahead of a wildland fire, a burning fire, we're going to go in and assess. We're going to triage. What homes have taken the steps to protect themselves from wildfire? Weeds, overgrown trees, brush, overhanging trees, access up the driveway. If a home is not deemed defensible, I am not going to commit my resources or put my crew at risk. That's just a fact of life. I'm going to go where we have a chance to protect a home. That is where following these home hardening measures and the defensible space measures outlined in Firewise helps us in advance of those wildland fires. And there's a graphic here I want to show you in a second. So here's the insurance commissioner's page. Kind of hard to see from here. I've got a QR code at the end that will take you to this page, but this gives you some information about home hardening and reducing your, potentially reducing your insurance premiums. So this is the graphic I talked about. Hopefully you can see that. The black line is structure loss in the first 24 hours, and these are major wildland fires. And the last 6-8 months of the end of summer and this winter that we've had are not reflected, but the data essentially remains the same. The black line is structure loss in the per 24-hour period. The red line is fire growth. So if you look at that fire or that graphic, 90-some-odd% of all structures lost on these major wildland fires are lost in the first 24 hours. We will eventually get enough fire apparatus and equipment and personnel to the fire to put the fire out. But it takes time. And where you buy us time and buy yourselves time and buy your homes time is what we like to say is prepping the battlefield. Do what you can in advance to slow the rate of that fire. So, how do we get started? Organize and get started. One of the requirements, like I said, is 8 to 2,500. I think 2,500 is too big, and you'll see why as we progress through here. And then a resident leader, a board or a committee to help that resident leader through the process. And it's data collection is all it is. And then your community boundary. This is why HOAs are such perfect for Firewise communities in a lot of aspects. So your boundary already exists. And I forget there's what the villas, north, whatever the 4 areas it's broken into, and I think we talked about this where the math works, right? The boundaries are already there. The organization is already there. Everything's in place. So you've already got your boundary, and my recommendation, as Michelle and I have talked about, is if you have 4 Firewise communities at once form, you fall into that manageable number, and you just, not copy, you do the process together, the resident leaders and the 4 boards do the process together and do the risk assessment and everything all at the same time, and it's a lot simpler than it looks if you were to look at the website. So, talking about the risk assessment, there are 11 categories where you'll do an assessment of your community, and it's very straightforward. It is not super difficult. One suggestion is to work with a local fire official. Any of us could help you with that. I would recommend working with your local, talk to one of the battalion chiefs here in the pass, and they can help you because they know the fire history. They know the specific risks inherent to this area, which again is the big hill that everyone can see from here. But they can help you through the process. It's 11 categories. You don't need to look at every structure within your community. You want kind of a snapshot of the community, a sample size that reflects the community. And what you're looking at is home hardening. What are construction materials? What's your roofing like? Dual pane or single pane windows? Do you have open eaves? Are your mesh in your attic vents? What size? 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch? These are the things that you're assessing as you go through it. That risk assessment needs to be updated every 5 years. These are some of the timelines that fall into Firewise. So that has to be updated every 5 years. This is an example, if you can see it, of it's check boxes. 0 to 25%, 25 to 50%, 50 to 75%, 75 to 100%. It's super simple check boxes to go through, looking at, like I said, your roofing material, soffit vents, your siding, your skirting, different materials. Talks a little bit about the immediate, intermediate, and extended zones, 0 to 5, 5 to 30, 30 to 100 foot of your defensible space, which, like I like to point out to HOAs, is HOAs have CCNRs. Among those are, you can't have dead and dying brush in your yard. You got to keep your bushes attractive. It's all aesthetics, nice looking yards. But part of that aesthetics is you're removing the flammable, dead and dying material. So you're already doing the work that Firewise requires. You're already doing it for the aesthetics of your community. So now you just document it. These are a lot of HOAs are perfect for Firewise communities because you're already doing everything. Now you just document. And I'm going to repeat myself a lot because it's just that simple. So this is where, assisted by your local fire department or your state forestry agency, that's me, but local fire department does have that local knowledge to help you better. What else? Like local fire factors, fire history, local ordinances. Now, in that respect, I know the fire factors, I know the fire history. I'll be honest, I don't know if Banning and or Beaumont, since he was nice enough to point out that you kind of have both right up on your property line. I don't know Banning and Beaumont local ordinances on brush clearance or other things within your assessment. So that's where having your local fire assist you through the process. Percentage of the home is accessible. So now you've done your risk assessment. Now you have a 3-year action plan. Looking at your assessment over your 3-year period, so obviously it's updated every 3 years, what are you going to do to address the deficiencies noted annually? And what are you going to do to maintain the positives that were found in your assessment? And that's all your risk assessment is. It's a 3-year plan. A couple of things. This is California specific. Defensible space is required by law, and that's that brush clearance, keeping your grass neatly mowed, trimming up your trees. It's required by law, so you can't phase in your defensible space. Evacuation planning is required in the California specific action plan, and we require that your evacuation planning be done in the first year, because if you, in your risk assessment, if you find that you don't have an evacuation plan, why would you wait 3 years to come up with an evacuation plan? Do that in the first year. Kind of common sense things. So, I will say this slide's kind of out of order because the portal is in there are a couple communities within the portal already started. But once you're done with your 3-year action plan and your risk assessment, you upload those documents into the portal. A couple other things. Annually, you have to have an education event. And you have to have documented brush clearance. There's a calculator in the website to assist you in your estimated cubic yards of brush clearance. Those are required annually for your annual renewal, which we do the first week of December. The renewal deadline to apply is the Friday before Thanksgiving, I think. And then we get to spend the first week of December reviewing all 1,200 renewal applications. It's a highlight of my year. Where was I going to go with that? Oh, and I forgot to fix the slide. So one of the other things is what is called the risk reduction investment. The investment, I don't like that they use that word investment, but it's think of your sweat equity. And the required investment is 1 hour per dwelling unit per year. So if anyone goes out and rakes up the dead leaves in their yard and spends an hour doing it once a year, you have met your risk reduction investment. Sound difficult? I'm going to repeat myself. It's not nearly as hard as it looks if you go look on the website. This is really easy to do. Now, the monthly value And this is why I bring Jimmy with me. 3349. I got to fix this slide and I keep forgetting to. That went up the first of the year. If you hire somebody to do your vegetation management or replace your single pane windows to dual pane windows or replace your 1/4 inch mesh to 1/8 inch mesh, it's harder to say than it looks, in your vents, any of these things that are recognized as a deficiency on your assessment, anything you pay somebody, the equivalent is the $33.49, right, per hour. So, I know, that's what I get, that's the look I get. Look on Michelle's face is the look I get. So, let's just take vegetation, let's take, you're gonna put all new dual pane windows in every structure. There's 100 structures. So $3,300, and I guarantee you dual pane windows in 100 structures is gonna cost more than $3,300. But once you've hit that $3,300, you've met your threshold of $33.49 per dwelling unit in lieu of an hour per dwelling unit. Does that make sense? If you have a landscape company that maintains the perimeter of the community, among other things, they're taking the dead and dying brush out, the overgrown weeds, the things where embers or fire can find someplace to grow. If your landscaping company removes that, they're doing your defensible space. So you can go spend an hour per dwelling unit per year clearing your defensible space, or you can pay somebody to do it. You have 1 hour minimum per dwelling unit per year, and you're only responsible for yours, or you pay somebody $33.49 to clear the vegetation. That's the equal, okay? Now, where the neighbor helping neighbor, and you're going to do this without paying somebody to do it, is I'm gonna go do my yard. Well, my neighbor physically can, for whatever reason, cannot maintain their yard. As a community, we're gonna get together and maintain their yard for them. I'm gonna go do a little bit, you're gonna go do a little bit, you're gonna go do a little bit, and their yard's fine. Because helping my neighbor keep their dead and dying brush is going to help protect my home, because their home is not gonna be a receptive fuel bed, okay? So this is where the community coming together helps in this program, okay? Hopefully I didn't stir up more confusion. Should just leave that out. Anyway, so in the first year, so to apply to be a Firewise community, you basically have to meet 1 year's worth of work to apply. It doesn't take a year, but you have to meet it. So you have to have a community education meeting. That's today. Check that box. You have to do your risk assessment, you have to do your action plan. You have to document your vegetation cleared in cubic yards, and there's a calculator on there, and I would hazard to guess that the landscaping company that does your work has a pretty good idea how much they've cleared. Check. You need to meet your risk reduction hours, and I'm not even gonna try, so 3,000 homes divided into 3 communities is 1,000. So that's 33,000. If for all the homes, I'm trying to break it up because we don't want to be that big, but 101,000 for the entire community, or each person's done an hour between now and you submit your application, or you pay $101,000 to your landscaper, or to put new roofs on, or to dual pane windows, or boxing your eaves, or any number of things. It doesn't have to be landscaping, but that's kind of the easy one. You've met the requirement. So that one might take a couple months to reach that threshold, rather than, cranking this all up by the end of the week, right? So realistically, 2 or 3 months, and that's to get everything documented. Then you submit it into the portal. Once you go through the whole thing and you click submit, it will go to the battalion chiefs at Sacramento level. I will be made aware of it, and if we're in communication, I will let them know. They typically spend their Fridays, and for all of us in land use planning, helping folks with Firewise is other duties as required. That's taking up 50, 60% of our time now, but we do have day jobs, so to speak. So I will let the battalion chiefs know to be on the lookout. They spend their Friday doing Firewise stuff, going, reviewing applications and doing their thing. If they happen to know that on a Monday, you guys uploaded all your stuff and you're ready for review, I'll let them know, and they'll set aside half hour, 45 minutes to review the application. Once they've approved it, it's unofficial because it goes to NFPA for their formal approval. But to my knowledge, if the battalion chiefs approve it, NFPA, it's a rubber stamp at that point. And then they will send you your documents and your certificate and all that other stuff. Up on the screen, and I can put this back up, or whoop, there it is, or leave it up. The QR codes will take you to our readyforwildfire.org. It'll take you to the NFPA, Preparing Your Home for Wildfire, which is their Firewise website. And there's the Insurance Commissioner's, Safer from Wildfires website. So scan any of those on your phone and it'll take you to those different websites. And then the next screen is just my contact info, which Michelle has, and I'd be happy to, answer any questions. But for now, I know that was quick and that's a lot of information. So does anybody have any questions right now? Yes, ma'am. Oop, microphone.
Hang on.
Don't want to get yelled at.
If you have artificial,
I still have it up. It's whoever, sorry. It's whoever's running the AV.
if you
There
have,
you go. Yes, ma'am.
if you have artificial turf, does that make you more susceptible for fire?
So, not necessarily, but remember, artificial turf is a petroleum-based product. So, that's the hard part is, now, some products are fire resistant and specifically coded. I am not an expert whatsoever. I happen to know this from listening to other people talk about it. But you gotta know and trust that whoever's installing your turf is installing the one that has been treated. So, not to give you a non-answer, it depends. Anyone else?
Okay, I'll let.
Hi, Joseph. I'm Gary Lyle. I've talked to you on the phone a few
Yep.
times and kind of initiated this process. The actual number of homes is 3,327 homes would be $111,000 amount. And
So-
I think for the most part, that can all be covered by just the homeowners. Just everybody has a landscaper that's doing their front yard. And all they have to do is submit one of their bills in to have that covered.
Yes, and that's where I say working, particularly with HOAs, or it's not as daunting. If you go to the website and look on what it takes to be a Firewise community, it's not as daunting as it seems. And yes, and now, I know we're talking about 33.
Yeah.
Remember, we want to keep it, officially, it's minimum of 8, maximum of 2,500. And I will say, if you think about whoever your resident leader is trying to keep track of 2,500 homes, who's done this, who's done that, right? It gets a little cumbersome when Sun Lakes is divided into 4 communities of roughly equal
800
numbers.
Yeah.
Then you've already got your 4 boundaries, your 4 communities within Sun Lakes. And I think we talked about it was what, Sun Lakes North, Sun Lakes Villas, Sun Lakes
Yeah,
What-
I initially did it in 3 sections. Michelle and I got together and put it in 4. I'm actually pushing towards 23 different sections, just to have each district do an application.
Well, and
because-
that's, pardon me, and that's for you guys in this room to decide. And
And I'll tell
Yeah.
you what, I'll tell you why I feel this, because I filled out an application for District 10, 197 homes. It populated a $5,700 amount that would have to be covered. I didn't sign anybody up, which makes me feel that we need to populate a sign-up sheet or an application that each person that is interested in Firewise fills out, so that they can help us collect the receipts to cover the expense. I don't
right.
expect
So,
that 50%.
okay, so expense, okay, so and this is why I don't like the term investment. It's not an expense. It's an either or. You spend 1 hour on your yard per year,
Well,
right? Or you hire
I live
somebody
in
to
the,
do
I
it.
live in the condos, and they do all our landscaping, so all I have to give you is our financial report and
Correct.
we're covered.
But I don't want to say I don't want to think, there is no expense. This is a completely free program. If you happen to hire somebody to do it in lieu of you doing it yourself, then the dollar amount, and that dollar amount is based on a federal volunteer hour equivalency of $33.49. That's where that number comes from. So don't think of it as the investment or the fee associated, or the fee is you do 1 hour of work per year for your dwelling. And I keep using the term dwelling unit because that's the official term used. I doubt there are any accessory dwelling units in the community, but if you have a detached second home on your property, then that counts as 2. So it's not a lot, it's per dwelling unit. Okay, that's why I keep using that expression. But the requirement is that you do 1 hour of work per year on your property. If your neighbor can't, the community comes together and helps. If you hire somebody in lieu of doing it yourself, like, I'm not gonna replace my dual pane windows, replace dual pane windows myself. I'm not gonna, I maintain my yard, but I'm gonna hire someone to box my eaves in. You know what I mean? That's where but that's on that federal equivalency of $33.49. So that's where I just wanna make sure it's clear, there's no fee associated with being in a Firewise community. It's, you can pay a contractor to do your hour of work instead.
Right, my concern is just collecting that as a resident leader. If I just took one district of 197 houses, that would be a monumental task in itself, just collecting all those receipts to get them to you.
And that's why I don't recommend the 2,500.
And I don't even know that I would get 50% participation in our community. So that drops the number down. So I am feeling that we need to populate a sign-up sheet where people actually fill out an application. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is on your brochure, it talks about hardscaping, 5-foot perimeter around the home, no vegetation. If I look at District 10 where I'm at, we have 3-foot high brush directly under the eaves around the perimeter of the property. That is all based on the governing documents that Sun Lakes has put together that recommends or has approved softscaping over hardscaping. And I'm wondering what your opinion is, if it's well manicured.
So Firewise, these are all recommendations. There are no requirements, documentation of what you're doing, right? But in your risk assessment and your 3-year action plan, they're recommendations. So for you guys to decide, and there's a lot of balls in the air on this one of your insurance company may require something within that 0 to 5 foot space, right? Firewise are recommendations, and the recommendations would be to maintain those so that they are not a receptive fuel. Now, is it a perfect world take all that out and moonscape everything 0 to 5 feet, yes, that's a perfect world. Is anybody gonna do that? I don't wanna do that to my house. And no, and that's why these are recommendations. Getting back before I forget to say it, when you were talking about your sign-up sheet, now that's a decision for you guys to make, right? When you make your community boundary, the one thing I'll tell you right now that'll get rejected immediately is if you have a handful of people in your, let's say it's your district, that are like, nope, we're not interested. You cannot draw your map around their properties. Oh, no, and it's not so much that people are like, no, I'm not interested. It's, and this is in, say, bigger communities, because you'll notice the Firewise, it's per dwelling unit, it's not size. They're not talking square miles, acres, none of that applies. There are areas in Central California that may be 40, 50,000 acres that can barely get 8 properties, right? So this is very much a scalable program, but let's say you get a hold of everybody around you, but that guy, I don't know who owns that property. Well, we're just gonna draw him out of there because I don't know if he wants to participate or not. And how can I include him if he's not gonna maintain his yard? Well, the flip side of that is if you do a patchwork quilt, the map will get, the whole application will get rejected for that. Now, you draw your boundary and include every property, obviously you want everybody to participate, because if that one neighbor down the street, now CCNRs govern the aesthetics of your yard, so it's not gonna be overgrown with dead and dying brush. So essentially, it's already done. The aesthetics part covers the fire safety part. But yes, you want them to be clean and free of dead and dying brush, because if the fire finds a receptive bed there, it can spread from there to the community. That's the purpose of educating everybody and everybody working together. But to that point, if that person doesn't want to be part of it, can't, whatever, doesn't see the value, doesn't want to waste their time, whatever their excuse might be, all that means is you do an hour and a half and you do an hour and a half, and there's your hour to meet that investment requirement. That's something to consider, right? If you go big, and the other thing is, if you draw your community perimeter borders, and not out of spite, you're just like, oh, look, this road's a perfect perimeter. And the guy on the other side of the road finds out and he's like, well, wait a minute, I want to be part of that. You have to start, and your application's approved, and your Firewise community is approved and recognized, and that guy goes, well, wait, I want to be part of that. You have to start over. You can't just go, oh, we'll just add one more. Because the whole thing is based on your numbers, it's based on the characteristics, it's based on your community, so you have to redraw the map. Well, when you redraw the map, your community just got bigger. Your potential, now, again, it's different down here because we're not talking about large homesteads or large ranches up in the Central Valley area, right? But if you add one property, you've just changed the boundary, you've changed the characteristics, and in theory, you've changed the threat. So, one of two things is go a little bit bigger or go more inclusive on your boundaries, and then as people find out about it, like, oh, I want to be part of that. Okay, well, this is what we do, and this is what you need to do to come along with everyone else, because you don't want to start the process over again when you find a new person interested. Any questions? Somebody there you go.
My one
Oh,
last
sorry.
thought is, since I moved in about 5 years ago, I'll say that my insurance has quadrupled because of Firewise, and there was, I've done research on this, and there was like $119 billion that were spent on wildfires before the Pacific Palisades and Altadena. So I see insurance going up, and being approved as a Firewise program and lowering our insurance rates is certainly the right step, I think, to lowering our insurance premiums.
And again, I agree. I don't get involved in the insurance discussion because I have no bearing. The patch, the badge, we have no say whatsoever in the insurance in this state. But I do like to point out that following Firewise And doing what's required to be recognized as a Firewise community is doing what you can to protect your most important investment. And I do think that is what matters the most. And so, full disclosure, when the new fire hazard severity zone maps came out for Southern California last week, and guess who now lives in the very high fire hazard severity zone and is looking at forming my very own Firewise community. So none of us are immune to it. I think he lives two doors down, or is it Sean? Our other captain who's had the effrontery to take his birthday today, so he took the day off. You can imagine that. Either he is in the very high and his next door neighbor is not, or vice versa, I don't remember. So we're not immune to this ourselves. But I think doing what you can to protect your largest investment is what really matters. Anyway.
Hi. I have a question on the landscaping. Most of our homes in the community have a brushery around the home. So my question is, did the organization have any kind of list of a fire retardant brush, plants, or anything we can do to prevent from, catching on fire?
So it's a very good question. There are resources out there that, now, I will say, generally speaking, nothing is fireproof, right? Nothing that, now, landscaping, there is fire resistant and fire adaptive. There are plants that actually need fire, and this is more in the wildland, that need fire for growth and sustainability. There are resources out there. There is some discussion on the Board of Forestry of what that list should look like, and from what I've heard from the board is there is so much out there, and part of the problem is it may not be native to this area, that they are reluctant to post a list because you may see something that's beautiful and aesthetic and what you want is fire resistant, and it's not native to here. And then it populates and grows and spreads, pardon the pun, but like wildfire, and you now have a non-native species that's become an invasive species. So there's some reluctance to publish a list like that, but I know there are resources out there that'll have the fire-resistant landscape ideas. But I know he's been.
Okay, so I know how much we pay the landscapers to remove brush, but it sounds like we have to calculate how many hours they spend removing brush.
Nope. It's the $33.49
to the landscaper
is the equivalent of, for Firewise purposes, is the equivalent of 1 hour.
Do we have to deduct hours they spend mowing grass, or is that considered applicable too?
I'm going out across the internet, right? Obviously, it should be a representative of what time has been spent. Mowing your green grass is yes, but more importantly is what are they doing in terms of keeping the dead and dying vegetation from being dead or dying.
Understood.
And staying there.
Got it.
And that's more of what's important. But again, and I know vegetation's the easy part, but if the community decides, and part of your risk assessment is, let's say there's flammable material, wood, fence, up against your structure. Well, that is a hazard. That's a receptive bed for embers. So if the community decides to put a wrought iron post, a steel post, between that wooden fence and the house, you've now cut that chain. Well, whatever is spent to put that metal post between the house and the fence, or the gate, whatever it might be, that is the same as that investment would be the same as your brush clearance.
Got it.
The community puts dual pane windows in, if they don't have them. That's
Got
the
it.
same. Vegetation's the easiest, because again, everybody maintains their vegetation. Not everybody replaces their windows every year, or their vents, or whatever it might be.
Just one more. Who is it, can you confirm who does the initial assessment? Who will lead us through that?
So it is designed that the resident leader and community members can walk through the community. It really is a simple checklist of what's in there. You can talk to the local station or local battalion chiefs. The Riverside unit, which is also the Riverside County Fire, but the Riverside unit of CAL FIRE, they're aware of the program. We're sort of helping them to understand what is going to be asked of them or what could be asked of them. I do have a separate agency I work with farther west, the Elsinore Valley area, that I can also reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to come out here and help. I don't know that they wouldn't. And worst case is one of us can come out and help you through it too.
But we can do it ourselves.
It's designed, yes, for you guys to do it yourself.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
So Brian, excuse me just a minute. So Brian, don't forget, so it is Gary, myself, you, Anne Marie Hanko. I saw him just a minute
See how that
ago.
works? You just got voluntold.
Yeah. Jim, where is Jim? I don't see, oh, Jim and Jim. So we do have quite a few people that want to be part as leaders, and Gary has already Gary has to sign. He wants to make sure everybody signs up. And again, I know, Gary, you got a little confused because he thought every homeowner had to pay that $33.27 or whatever it was.
What's required is you spend 1 hour a year
Right.
doing something to harden your home against wildfire. If you pay somebody to do it for you, that's the equivalency.
Right. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you are not paying $33.27 every year to do this program. It is a free program, and Gary and I and Brian and Jim and Anne Marie is going to help everybody. So Gary will have a sign-up sheet. So if you're interested in even participating, just to help us along, that'd be great. And we will be the community leaders.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm curious about fire department general response times, not in a wildfire situation, but in general, what can I expect a fire department to respond, the shortest and longest, 5 minutes and a half an hour?
Well, that would be a question for your local.
I'm just asking general.
Now, I will say, as a general rule of thumb, 3 to 5 minutes, but that is not always realistic, depending on how farther you are from the fire station, what is the commitment of your local resources. There's a lot of factors that go into that, and you know,
Shortest,
are you
longest, 3 to...
what are you in the city of Banning? I mean, but think about it, if you're in Banning right by Station 89, they're gonna be there a lot faster. If you're at the foot of the hills down by the correctional facility, it's gonna take them longer to get there. So, and that's, I don't even know, what is that, 10 minutes? Well, and that's, again, that is a question for your local.
Sounds like it's pretty fast, thanks.
That's the goal. No promises, but that is the goal.
Isn't this something that we can work with our EPAP structure within the community?
So the EPAP has a lot. I will work with Janice and with Candace, but they have so much going on. I didn't want to burden them, not that we don't have things going on, but we could work with EPAP and see. I don't want to have the zone captains take care of that. They've got a lot on their plate already. But we can work with them and see if we can figure something out so that it's not just the 5 of us working together, it's the whole community working together and making sure that everybody understands the importance of this Firewise program.
I just wanted to remind everybody that of our 23 districts, we currently have 7 that don't have EPAP coordinators. So that's an issue too.
Yes, we do have an evacuation plan.
And
So
that's
that's done.
perfect.
So we actually have quite a few things done.
Yeah.
We just have to do it all together. More questions? Please don't, I don't want you guys to be shy. Please ask questions.
Hello.
I'm just curious about the properties that are for sale or have no sale signs and there's nobody living in them. Who's taking care of those properties?
I can answer that. So, if they are in foreclosure or they're anything like that, the HOA is taking care of them. So they're doing the best that they can. They're clearing out all the brush. They're clearing out all the everything dead around there. So they are doing that. The HOA is taking care of that. Now, do they go there every single week? No, they don't. But they are taking care of all the vacant properties that we know of, that we can take care of. Now, if it's a renter, it's up to the homeowner. It's not up to the renter. It's up to the homeowner. So we can contact the homeowner and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Again, 1 hour, we can do that. Go and clean up their area and make sure everything's clean and tidy. So, I mean, if all of us are working together, I think it's going to be good. We've got 3327 homes here. That's over 6,000 residents. I'm sure we can get some of us together and make this a very wonderful project that, that we'll be proud of as Sun Lakes community to do this.
Oops. Thank you. I don't know if this is the proper time to access or not, and so we're going to all be doing things to protect our properties. It's not going to do us any good if the HOA and the landscaper does not maintain and cut back and thin the trees that are all around us, that are a matchstick just waiting to happen. So is the board adjusting to this also as a master association? Thank you.
Well, I know that Bob is all for this, and as right now he's still your president, so I know that he's actually working and wants to be part of this also. Can I speak for the whole new board? No, I have no idea what the new board is going to do. I can't imagine for the life of me that they would not want us to be a Firewise community. I would actually be shocked. So I can't speak for the new board, but I do think that they're going to be on board with this. And I did see we've got a new tree trimming service, Integrity, and I just saw them over on my side when I was walking this morning, and they're cutting back all those dead trees. So that's already something that we're already taking care of. So the only thing that I'm concerned with, and I need to ask you this, Joe, on the perimeter of our Sun Lakes that we do not own, which belongs to Caltrans, and there's brush and everything against our fence, what happens with that? We can't go across and trim all that ourselves.
Correct.
What would happen with that?
So you're only responsible for what you have legal access to, right? So outside that, we talk about the 0 to 5, 5 to 30, 30 to 100. Well, that goes to your property line. And then the HOA, it's to the HOA's property line in the common area. But what you can do, and there's no promises, but when you do your risk assessment, and that on the perimeter of the neighborhood is identified as a risk, in your action plan, it's work with said property owner to reduce, however you word it. Basically, work with that property owner to help us protect our homes from wildfire. You now, if it's Caltrans, right, with your risk assessment and everything else, you have something tangible to take to whoever your contact may be and say, listen, we did this for Firewise. This is what was identified as a risk to our community. What can we do together as a partnership to reduce this risk? And I'm not saying they're going to, you're Firewise, we'll jump right on that. Right. But that it strengthens your argument a little bit, okay, I guess. And that's just my opinion. That's not the patch talk, and that's my opinion. But having that document that you've done this risk assessment and that's been identified as a risk has the potential to strengthen your argument, so to speak.
So if we didn't get that approval and we didn't get that, would that cause us, because that's on the north side for me, would that cause us not to be approved?
No.
Okay.
No. Oh. Your action plan, and so there's two things to, again, you're only responsible for your defensible space up to your property line. Okay. So your action plan cannot be to, over a 3-year period, implement defensible space. You're required by law to have it now. So but that's only what the property you're responsible for. But your action plan now is to work with neighboring properties outside of your community. Caltrans, I've got communities that border the national forest, same concern. I've got communities that border state parks, same concerns. So now that your action plan is to work with that property owner to reach a common goal.
Okay.
Now you've got this document to go to that property owner and say, hey, we've done this, this is what we're trying to do, this is why we're trying to do it, what can you do to help us? Now you've already got your recognition, right? They're not gonna keep you from getting that recognition.
Okay, okay.
But now you've got all this stuff, you go to that property owner and say, what can you do to help us protect our neighborhood? And this is identified as a problem. And, hopefully they're willing to help out.
I have a question.
Okay?
So I'm thinking of my house and my neighbors. A lot of us have large wood sunshades over a back patio,
Yep.
gazebo type structures, and mine's original, 30 years old, and probably needs a lot of work, but there's a lot of wood covering over our back patios, and these wood structures are bolted to our houses. So I said, well, it's kind of risky. Embers get onto that wood covering that's
Yep.
right next to the house. I'm not going to tear that down. How would we address, that would be a fire risk, I would think.
So
How would you address a wood patio
you've,
covering?
as this example, you've identified a concern in your risk assessment. It's whatever column it is, it's a flammable material attached to your structure.
Yep.
So these are recommendations. Your action plan are recommendations. Again, defensible space and evacuation planning are required by law. Everything else, recommendations. So your 3-year action plan, and this is where we talk about the grant funding, right? Your 3-year action plan is to replace, over 3 years, the plan, all wood patio covers with non-flammable material.
Wow.
That's a plan, not a mandate. Hang on, right? It's a plan, not a mandate. Well, now, with grant funding, you go to, say, a fire safe council or a nonprofit, or you form a nonprofit or whatever you do. Now you go to grant funding to harden your home to replace those flammable structures through grant funding. And you found that risk. This is your plan to deal with it. This is what we need to do to meet our goal. Maybe there's reserve funds in the HOA that can do it. Maybe the HOA or everyone agrees to a special assessment to do it, right? There are ways to do it. Now, does that mean in 3 years someone's gonna come knocking on your door and say, hey, you wanna do this in 3 years, did you do it? No, it's not a mandate, it's a recommendation. So, in 3 years, you do your or in 5 years, you do your new risk assessment, and a couple of them have been fixed, but not all of them. Well, guess what we're gonna do the next 3 years? We're gonna try to get the ones that haven't been done yet. It's not a perfect answer, but you've identified the risk, now you're gonna try to fix it.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? Oh boy, lots of hands, let's go.
You know what, Gary, hang on. Gary, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Following on, I think from Barbara's question, I'm curious if the sub-association HOA boards have been officially notified of this program, and have they bought into this? Because the expenses for doing some of the repairs, like getting the embers into those, I can't remember what yeah, thank you, Michelle. Those would be borne by the sub-associate HOA. So I don't know if you're going to answer that here, but I wanted to go on the record with that question because we are recorded, and somewhere down the line someone needs to formally address that. Because there are about 600-ish, 600 to 700-ish homes involved, And based on your explanation of dividing our community into, I believe it's 4 sections, it appears to me that each of the 3 sub-associations would be a part of, they may be divided into going with other streets, just whatever. I think you understand what I'm asking.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll answer that question. So this is just preliminary. We're just getting all the information. Captain Joe has come here to give us the explanation so that we understand, so that the leaders understand. Once we are able to get everything together, we will go to the sub-associations, and don't forget, we've got a district delegate right here that's going to be part of it, Brian O'Grady, also Gary Lyle. So we haven't gotten to the point where we need to contact everybody yet. We're trying to get all the information out to everybody to make sure everybody wants to be part of this, which I can't imagine that you wouldn't want to be, but this is all informational right now, and we're going to try and do the best that we possibly can to get all this information out with the board's approval. I can't imagine the board's going to have a problem with this, and I don't think, if you want to have us to be a Firewise community, these are the things that have to be in place. So it's not that you guys are going to be doing it. You've got leaders that are going to be putting all this up, and then you just have to do your 1 hour or making sure that your home, and I know with the condos and the villas, they already have it managed through First Service. So we've got a maintenance company that already does that for you. So you're not going to have to go up there and put those things in your attic or whatever they are, in your vents. So don't worry about that. And once we get more information and I can get that out to you, I will absolutely do it.
It's my understanding we have nonprofit status, Sun Lakes Country Club, so we could just fill out an application for grants, right? Or do we need a special?
No, if Sun Lakes is a nonprofit, they can seek the grant funding as the nonprofit, and then they would be the steward of those monies to then do, and I will say, just the forensic accounting is make sure that any grant funding for home hardening things is spent on home hardening, or just, that would be my.
I don't know that we're a nonprofit, and I'm almost certain that we are not.
Who are the leaders, the identified leaders who are going to move forward in our community?
Brian O'Grady, Gary Lyle.
Do you want the microphone, Michelle?
Myself.
You're supposed to use a microphone.
I'm sorry. I'm looking in there thinking I'm speaking in it. So it is Brian O'Grady, Gary Lyle, Jim Nichols, Anne Marie Hanko, and myself. And if we can get some other people in there to help us along, Gary's going to put a sign, I think he put a sign-up sheet up there. If you're interested in helping and being a leader, we can maybe divide some of our 4 segments up so that we don't have 500 houses each. I think I've got 900 homes. Right.
Yeah, and the size of the community will kind of dictate, because let's face it, if you're a 900 community and there's a resident leader and nobody else, someone's going to call foul. Like, are you really doing this? And putting it all on one person. So the larger the community, probably the bigger the board. But yeah, 3, 4, that should be able to, yeah. And that's a realistic number to sort of handle, keeping track of the volunteer hours, the risk reduction investment, or what are the landscapers, or, we hire a vendor to come in and do the smaller mesh in our attic vents. Keeping track of those things. Somebody at the end of November is either going to keep track of it during the year, or at the end of November is going to upload all the information into the portal for the renewal. Somebody has to do that. Somebody has to help them keep track of everything. So Yeah, 3 or 4 is probably a good number.
Any other questions? Really? So I'm thinking everybody's gonna come here and sign this sheet? Okay, well, thank you, Joe, I so
Yep.
appreciate it. And if
No
you
problem.
could just stay just a few minutes, Gary and I'd like to show you our plan.
Okay.
And something that we can, hopefully that we can do.
Yeah.
So I just want to let you know, everyone, that thank you, Joe.
Yep.
I want to, thank you. I want to let everybody know that our next community awareness is May 6th, and we're having Amber Rockwell from the City of Banning Utility, and also
I'm
Isaac
right there with you.
Nelson and Tom Wall from Synergy Company. So they will be here on May 6th, and I just want to let you know that Amber Rockwell, she is not going to talk about our utility bills. That's not her department. So, and I'll reiterate that when she comes, but it's going to be a very interesting, they're going to have prizes, they're going to have a couple of games, so I encourage everybody to attend that one. So I appreciate you attending, thank you.